She sat across from me gushing about her fiancé. She didn't notice when my hand paused on the guest list or that I'd already said vows to the man she was marrying. When she walked into my studio for the first time, Elise looked like every bride does at the start, bright-eyed, floating slightly above the ground, brimming with the kind of innocence that thinks love is something you can script. She carried a manila folder thick with dreams and a Pinterest board plastered in pastels, all eager to be made real. "He's the one," she said, sliding a photo toward me like it was sacred. I looked down, and the world stilled. Logan. The man in the picture, smiling, casual, hers, was still my husband. Legally, emotionally, unforgivably mine. I didn't blink. "Tell me everything," she gushed. About the proposal, about how he'd cried, about how he'd said she'd healed every wound left by his mysterious past. I listened. I nodded. I smiled like I wasn't swallowing glass. "We want something elegant but warm," she said. "Not too stiff. Something timeless." I traced the edge of the photo with my finger, careful not to show the tremor in my hand. "And the groom?" I asked. "Does he have a vision?" She laughed. "He says I'm the vision." I smiled again. Because of course he did. That was always Logan's trick, make you feel like the only woman breathing. Elise kept talking, completely unaware that she'd just hired her fiancé's wife to orchestrate her wedding. I stared at her left hand, at the ring that once lived on mine. It looked tighter on her finger, like it already sensed it didn't belong. "We want a fall wedding," she continued. "Crisp air, deep colors. He said he wants it to feel final." I tilted my head. "Final? Like an ending to an old chapter," she explained, smiling. "A fresh start." My breath didn't hitch, but my heart did shift. "Then we'll give him the perfect ending," I said. "One he won't forget." After she left, I sat in the quiet, staring at the door she'd floated through. I'd been planning weddings for 7 years. Seen every kind of love, messy, pure, performative. But this was new. This was war dressed in ivory. Logan had disappeared 2 years ago, vanishing with vague excuses and half our savings. No final fight or even divorce. Just a text that said, "You deserve better." And now here he was, rebranded, recycled, and engaged to someone who still believed in forever. I could have said no. Could have told her the truth. But I didn't. I accepted the job instead. Not because I was broken or because I wanted him back, but because I wanted to look him in the eye and let him see what he left behind. I wanted him to flinch every time I adjusted a napkin. I wanted him to wonder if I'd tell her. If I'd ruin everything. If I'd keep his secret or become it. The power in silence is something most people never learn. But I'd had years of practice. And now I had an audience. Elise wanted a wedding. Logan wanted a clean slate. I wanted to watch them burn. Slowly, beautifully, together. That night, I poured a glass of wine and opened our wedding album. I hadn't touched it in years. His handwriting still curled in the margins of our vows, full of promises he never had the spine to keep. I stared at our smiles, wondering how many lies had been embedded in each photo. The next morning, I ordered custom stationery and blocked off 6 months in my calendar. Elise's dream wedding was about to become the most important event I'd ever designed. Because this time, the theme wasn't love. It was consequence. And every detail would carry my signature. The first email I sent her included mock-ups, color palettes, and a gentle note. "Let me know if there's anything you or Logan feel strongly about." I didn't hear back from him. Of course I didn't. Cowards rarely write back. But Elise responded within minutes, grateful, bubbly, excited to collaborate. "He trusts my taste," she said. "Just tell me what you need from us." I wanted to laugh. What I needed couldn't be listed in a spreadsheet. It lived in the space between betrayal and design. "We'll start with florals," I replied. "Something rich, deep, unforgettable. Just like the ruin I was preparing." As I hung up the phone that afternoon, I caught my reflection in the studio mirror. Same eyes. Same mouth. But something behind them had shifted. This wasn't about heartbreak anymore. It was about precision. And revenge, when done properly, doesn't scream. It doesn't beg. It waits. It smiles. It plans. I turned back to my desk and opened a fresh folder labeled Thatcher Wedding. And as I clicked on Logan's contact information, still saved, still there, I felt nothing but calm. This wasn't the beginning of a love story. This was the blueprint for his end. And I was going to make it beautiful. If you're hooked already, tap the like button and share this with someone who believes karma wears heels. This story is just beginning, and trust me, it only gets darker from here. The first time I saw him again, he walked into the vendor meeting late, charming, tanned, and tragically unaware that his sins had aged better than he had. He kissed Elise's cheek like she was air, sat across from me like I was furniture, and smiled that same hollow smile that once tricked me into thinking he was safe. "This is Ivy," Elise said brightly. "The planner I told you about." He looked at me, and for a moment, the mask cracked. Just a flicker of panic behind polished teeth. "Ivy," he said, voice tight. "Pleasure." "Oh," I replied, smiling. "You've no idea." He tried to play it cool, but his eyes darted. He didn't expect me to look this composed. I watched his gaze trace my earrings, my lipstick, my control. Elise handed me a binder, chirping about floral budgets. Logan barely spoke. Every word was a minefield. He didn't know what I'd told her. Didn't know what I planned to. And that was power. He had to smile. Had to sit beside his wife while she scheduled her vows with his other one. I never raised my voice. Never let on. But every silence between us screamed. And he heard it loudest. The meeting ended without blood. Elise left first, humming, drunk on wedding joy. Logan stayed behind, just long enough to say what cowards always say. "What do you want from me?" he asked, his voice low, sharp. I didn't answer immediately. I closed my laptop slowly, deliberately, letting the pause wrap around his throat. "To do my job," I finally said. "To give Elise the wedding she deserves." "Please," he hissed, stepping closer. "Don't do this." I looked him dead in the eyes. "Don't confuse mercy with silence. You lost my mercy the day you walked out the door." He backed away. He called that night. Twice. I let it ring. I knew what he wanted to explain, to plead, to reframe the narrative before it slipped from his control. But I wasn't interested in hearing his edits. He'd had years to tell the truth. Now it was my story to shape. Elise sent me a playlist of songs she wanted played during the reception. "He loves this one," she wrote beside a soft piano ballad. I listened to it once, then deleted it from the queue. Some songs don't deserve to play on loop. Some lies don't get a soundtrack. The next day, he tried a new tactic, pretending. He brought Elise coffee, made jokes about tablecloths, played the doting fiancé like it was second nature. But he was stiff, watching me with the twitchy awareness of a man sitting beside a bomb and praying it doesn't tick. "Ivy's got impeccable taste," Elise beamed. "Don't you think?" "She always did," he muttered. She didn't hear it. But I did. And I filed it away, next to the hundreds of things he never said when it mattered. Regret is useless in men like Logan. They regret being caught, not being cruel. Elise asked me one afternoon, "Do you think people can change?" She said it casually while picking centerpieces. I didn't look up. "No," I said. "But they get better at hiding who they are." She blinked, surprised by the bluntness. "That's dark." "It's accurate," I replied. "Some people lie for love. Others lie to survive. Logan? He lies to win." She went quiet after that. Her hands stilled over the lace samples. I didn't push. The seed had been planted. The doubt was there now, small, but growing. It wouldn't be long before it bloomed into suspicion. And when it did, I'd be ready. He sent flowers to my office. Not to apologize, no, Logan doesn't apologize. It was a threat dressed in roses. No note. Just petals and pressure. I left them in the stairwell, let them wilt in public. The receptionist asked why. "They're not mine," I said. "They belong to someone who doesn't exist anymore." Elise texted me that night. "He's being strange lately. Jumpy. Off." I stared at the message, then typed, "Maybe he knows something you don't." I deleted it before sending. Too soon. She needed to arrive at the truth herself. People believe betrayal best when they taste it alone. By the end of the week, he stopped trying. The silence between us returned, thick, suffocating, familiar. But this time, it wasn't mine to carry. It was his. He was waiting for me to explode. To expose him. To ruin him in one loud, cinematic scene. But that's not how I work. Real vengeance doesn't detonate. It simmers. It seeps into the fabric of your plans until every choice becomes a noose. Elise's dream wedding was still on track. The dress, the venue, the cake. But underneath it all, I was laying the foundation for something far more memorable. His reckoning. Elise handed me a menu of signature cocktails she'd curated herself, every detail carefully themed, each drink named after a memory she thought was shared. Logan loves whiskey, she smiled. But only if it's got honey. I nodded, made a note. Didn't mention how he used to mock sweetened liquor when we were married. What about food? She asked. He says he doesn't care, but I know better. I bet she did. Every woman thinks she knows her man, until the past shows up in stilettos and exposes the truth behind his appetite. Let's go with something rich, I said. Layers always matter. I became indispensable. Elise called me every day. Sometimes for questions. Sometimes for comfort. Sometimes just to share a photo of a dress she'd seen online, captioned, "Would he like this?" I always said yes. Always made her feel like she was building something unshakable. All while Logan watched, increasingly silent, slowly suffocating beneath the weight of my presence. I didn't scream. I didn't threaten. I simply became the shadow in every decision. The woman beside the woman he was trying to convince. And that's when it started to break, not because I pushed, but because liars crumble when truth refuses to flinch. He cornered me in the supply room one day, eyes bloodshot, jaw locked. "Why are you doing this?" he whispered, like a man already halfway to drowning. "Because I said I would help her," I replied. "And I always keep my promises." "You're going to destroy her." I leaned in. "No, Logan. You already did. I'm just making sure she sees the wreckage." He looked away, ashamed or afraid, I couldn't tell. Both looked the same on him now. He knew the timeline. He knew I hadn't filed the annulment. He gambled on my silence. But men like him always underestimate the aftermath. Elise asked me to meet her mother. Over tea and heirloom china, I smiled and played the part. The mother adored me, said I had an eye for structure. She meant florals, but the irony wasn't lost on me. I did have an eye for weakness, for dissonance, for fault lines in false love stories. Logan's had a hard past, the mother offered. It's good he found someone like Elise. I sipped my tea. He's very lucky. I didn't say how I knew. Didn't say why I knew. But by the time dessert was served, even the porcelain had started to feel brittle. Logan tried again, this time through mutuals. Old friends we hadn't spoken to in years suddenly reached out. "He wants peace," one said. "He's scared you'll ruin everything." I didn't reply. If he wanted peace, he should have bought it with honesty. But Logan didn't traffic in truth. He trafficked in hope. And Elise, poor Elise, was still selling belief like it came in mason jars and satin ribbons. I watched her try on veils one afternoon. She twirled, beaming. "He says I look like Grace." I adjusted the fabric, smoothing the lie. "You look like something sacred," I whispered. And she did. She still believed. Every time Logan walked into a room, he scanned for me, eyes flicking, breath catching, dread etched in every movement. I became the ghost at the feast, the phantom standing between his past and his delusion. Elise never noticed. She was planning futures. He was bracing for impact. "He's been distant," she told me one evening. "I think he's overwhelmed." I nodded. "Weddings reveal things," I said. "Sometimes what's sacred. Sometimes what's broken." She frowned. "You think something's broken?" I met her eyes and said gently, "Not yet." And it was the truth. Because I hadn't shattered it yet. I was still warming the hammer. I sent them both their final RSVP list, color-coded, categorized, clean. Elise called me sobbing over how perfect it was. "You're the only person keeping this on track," she said. "I don't know what I'd do without you." I told her she'd be fine. Stronger than she knew. Logan, on the other hand, said nothing. Didn't reply. Just sent back an email confirming the names, the meals, the silence. That's how I knew he was unraveling. Because when he stopped controlling the narrative, he disappeared. Not physically, but in spirit. He'd built a life on omission. Now he was drowning in every detail. The final walkthrough was scheduled. The seating chart was printed. Elise was radiant. Logan was pale. And me? I was ready. Not for the wedding. For the reveal. Because sometimes the best way to show someone who they really married is to let them walk all the way down the aisle first. I stood in the empty venue that night, lights dimmed, silence thick. This wasn't just a job. This was a reckoning. He'd made me invisible. He'd erased me. And now? I was the architecture of his collapse. No one survives a wedding built on betrayal. Not even the groom. The rehearsal dinner was 2 days away. Elise wanted candlelight and poetry. Logan wanted whiskey and an exit strategy. I wanted him trapped. Every detail was locked: timelines, playlists, seating. All that remained was the final descent. Elise texted me late that night. "He's pulling away. Do you think he's having doubts?" I stared at the screen, wondering how much doubt she could handle before the truth shattered everything. I typed, "You're not the one with something to hide." Then I deleted it. Too soon. She needed to walk into this disaster willingly. Otherwise, the wreckage wouldn't stick. And I wanted it to scar. Logan stopped looking me in the eyes. He responded to emails with one-word replies. His hands shook at vendor meetings. He was unraveling, quietly, in slow motion. I didn't touch it. Didn't rush the fall. Real destruction isn't a shove, it's gravity. "You've been so calm," Elise told me. "I'm falling apart and you're just still." I smiled gently. Stillness isn't emptiness. Sometimes it's precision. She nodded, not understanding. She would. Soon. There's something sacred about watching a man collapse under the weight of the lie he built. Especially when that weight is measured in place cards, centerpieces, and one bride's desperate belief in forever. The warning came in whispers. Not from me, but from the cracks in Logan's armor. Elise overheard him on the phone, speaking in a voice she didn't recognize. He said it was work, she told me. But his voice was cold. She searched my face for reaction. I offered none. "Do you think he's hiding something?" she asked. "I think you already know the answer," I said quietly. That's when her expression changed, subtle, but seismic. Her hands didn't shake. Her smile didn't drop. But her eyes? They stopped believing. For the first time, she looked at her wedding like it was a question. She began asking things she never asked before. About the budget. About the timeline. About who signed the contracts. "He left everything to me," she said, suddenly uncertain. "Is that normal?" I nodded. "It is for men who don't plan to stay." She didn't flinch. That surprised me. I think something inside her had already started grieving. "Why didn't you ever marry?" she asked one day, not knowing the irony. I smiled. "I did. Once. Briefly." "What happened?" I took a long breath. "He left before the ink dried. Said I deserved better." Her lips parted. She didn't connect the dots yet. But they were drawing themselves. I met Logan outside the venue 2 days before the wedding. He was smoking, a habit he swore he'd quit. "You win," he said. "That's not what this is," I replied. "Isn't it?" He laughed bitterly. "You planned my execution like it was an art exhibit." I stepped closer. "No, Logan. I planned her liberation. Yours was just a necessary casualty." His hands trembled. "She'll hate me." "She should." "And you." I tilted my head. "I already did." I turned to leave. "You can still stop this," he said behind me. I didn't turn around. "I am stopping it. You're just too late to notice." That night, Elise called me. Her voice was calm, too calm. "I saw an email," she said. "An old one. From years ago. It had your name in it." I waited. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked. I let silence sit between us like a verdict. "Because I needed to know if you'd still walk toward him, even with the signs screaming no." She exhaled. "And now?" "Now," I said, "you deserve the full truth. But not over the phone. Not in pieces. You'll hear it. All of it. At the altar." She didn't cry. That was the moment I knew she was ready. The final fitting came the next morning. Elise stood in front of the mirror, veil draped over her face like a curtain before the reveal. "I don't feel like a bride," she said. "You don't look like one," I replied. "You look like someone about to change their life." She turned toward me. "Do you regret not warning me sooner?" "No," I said. "I regret that someone had to." She nodded slowly. "Then, make it beautiful." I met her gaze in the mirror. "I always do." And with that, the deal was sealed. The dress was perfect. The betrayal was dressed. The execution was set. Logan arrived late to the final rehearsal. He looked tired. Hollow. Half of what he had been. Elise didn't speak to him much. Just smiled politely, rehearsed her lines, then left early. He turned to me afterward. "She knows, doesn't she?" "Not everything," I said. "But enough." "You want her to hate me?" "No, Logan," I said. "I want her to hate what you did. You just happened to be the face of it." He opened his mouth like he might beg. But I was already walking away. Some men don't deserve closure. They deserve the ceremony. the silence, and the fall that follows. The night before the wedding, the venue sat still, tables set, candles unlit, air thick with expectation. I walked through the hall slowly, touching everything, chairs, glassware, petals curled just right. Beauty is its own kind of blade when pointed correctly. I wasn't here to sabotage. I was here to frame. Every rose, every fork, every breath of this room would whisper the same thing by the end of tomorrow. He chose the wrong woman to disappear from. This wasn't revenge anymore. It was storytelling. And Logan was just one final page away from being the footnote in his own fairy tale. Elise sent me her vows late that night. Tell me if they're too much, she said. I read them in silence, soft, honest, naive. He saved me, one line read. He made me feel whole again. I didn't correct her. Some truths aren't ready to land until the curtain falls. They're perfect, I replied. From the heart. And they were hers. Her words would strike harder when said against the lies he fed both of us. I made sure they were printed on the finest parchment. If she was going to deliver heartbreak, she'd do it dressed in elegance. Let every syllable slice in silk. That morning, Elise was luminous. Hair pinned, skin glowing, nerves hidden under practiced joy. I watched her walk in circles, humming to herself, repeating his name like it was still sacred. Logan arrived later, disheveled, distracted, trying to look present. He couldn't even meet her eyes. The photographer captured their first look. Her beaming. Him stiff. A perfect image, one that would age like milk once the truth surfaced. He's just nervous, Elise told me, almost to herself. I nodded, gently fixing her veil. Then let's make sure he never forgets this feeling. She smiled. Still unaware. Still holding on. But not for long. Guests filled the pews. Whispering, adjusting, waiting. Music played. Florals hung overhead like a canopy of hope. I stood near the altar, clipboard in hand, every breath measured. Logan shifted in place, pulling at his collar, sweat glinting at his hairline. I watched him scan the crowd like a man awaiting a bullet. But I wasn't the one holding the weapon. Elise was. She just didn't know it yet. Not fully. The officiant cleared his throat. The music swelled. And the doors opened. There she was gliding down the aisle, white gown shimmering, unaware she was walking into her own resurrection. As she reached him, he couldn't even pretend. His smile cracked, fragile and shallow. Elise noticed. Her brow furrowed for half a second before smoothing back into place. Denial is a powerful drug. The ceremony began. Vows recited. Promises exchanged. Until the moment arrived. The question. If any person knows of any lawful reason why these two should not be joined in marriage, I turned. So did everyone else. Elise didn't blink. She stepped forward before I could. Before anyone could. And with terrifying grace, she spoke, clear, calm, final, I do. The room froze. Logan's breath vanished. And the silence broke like bone. I do, she repeated, louder this time. I know a reason. The officiant faltered, unsure. Logan whispered her name, panicked. But Elise didn't flinch. She turned to the guests. Because he's already married. Murmurs rippled. Gasps echoed. To her. She pointed at me. Every head turned. My pulse didn't rise. I had prepared for this moment like a surgeon preps for incision. I found the license, she continued. 2 years ago. Still valid. Still legal. He never filed the annulment. Logan stepped forward, stammering. Elise, I can explain, you can try, she said. But I brought proof. And witnesses. So choose your lies carefully. The crowd broke into whispers, rising like static. Elise handed the officiant the paperwork. My signature. Logan's. A date that haunted him. Elise's mother wept. Someone from the groom's side stood and left. Logan looked around like he could run, but found no exits. Why? Elise asked him, voice shaking now. Why not tell me? Why let her plan our wedding? He said nothing. What could he say? That he thought we were both too stupid to see the cracks? That we'd never talk, never dig, never connect the timelines? He gambled on our isolation. And now, both of us were standing over the wreckage. The officiant stepped back. Elise didn't cry. She simply turned to the guests. Thank you all for coming, she said. This ceremony is cancelled. But don't leave. The truth is just getting started. Then she walked down the aisle, not in tears, but with grace sharpened into vengeance. I followed. The guests didn't clap. They didn't move. They just stared as Logan stood alone at the altar, ghost white, abandoned beneath the weight of everything he thought he could bury. But the thing about weddings? They reveal what's hidden. And Logan had been hiding from the wrong woman. Now he had nowhere left to hide. Elise didn't leave the building. She went straight to the reception hall, where champagne had already been poured and a playlist queued for celebration. Guests trailed in behind her, stunned, cautious, unsure if this was part of the act or the aftermath. She stood near the mic, eyes forward, veil gone. "You all came for a wedding," she said, voice clear, steady. "But what you got is the reason weddings should come with disclaimers." Laughter, tense, unsure. "Logan didn't just lie to me," she continued. "He broke the law. And worse, he underestimated me." She raised her glass. "To the end of fairy tales." I stood in the back, letting her have the stage. This was her moment. I'd spent months designing it, and she was delivering it flawlessly. Logan hadn't shown up. Of course he hadn't. He was probably somewhere trying to erase us from his story. But that's the thing about truth, it doesn't get deleted. It gets shared. And Elise had turned hers into spectacle. "Some of you might be wondering how I found out," she said. "Turns out, when you hire a wedding planner, you should ask if she's already married to your groom." That's when the room gasped. That's when I stepped forward. I didn't grab the mic. I didn't need to. I just walked to the front, calm as ever, and stood beside her. Our unity wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It was the kind of solidarity that silences liars and burns through deception like acid. "I never told her," I said, "because I wanted to see if he'd do it himself." He didn't. So now he's not just a liar. He's a coward with witnesses. Elise smiled faintly, then turned back to the crowd. "I planned a wedding. She planned the warning. And together, we just gave Logan the most honest day of his life." The guests didn't leave. They sat in stunned stillness, watching as Elise poured herself a drink and toasted nothing. Her father stood eventually, tried to apologize for ever believing in Logan. "We all believed him," she said. "That's what he's good at, performance." But he forgot one thing. The audience always finds out when the show is fake. Then she played the video, the one I didn't know she had. A montage of their engagement, followed by a single line, "She deserves better." Logan's voice, clipped from an old voicemail to me. The irony rippled through the room like thunder. Elise didn't even blink. A woman in the crowd stood up, Logan's ex, apparently. "He told me he wasn't ready for marriage," she said. "Now I see why." Others followed. One by one, women who had dated him, trusted him, recognized his patterns. Elise didn't flinch. "Welcome to the support group," she said, raising her glass again. "Here, we serve closure, chilled and public." I couldn't have planned it better if I tried. What began as a wedding had become an indictment. Not just of Logan, but of every man who believes women don't talk, don't investigate, don't burn back. The hall wasn't a reception. It was a reckoning. The cake was wheeled out, 2 tiers untouched. Elise walked up, picked up the knife, and sliced it clean down the middle. "Might as well get something sweet out of this," she said. "After all, I paid for it." Everyone laughed. Not out of joy, but release. The kind of laugh you give when you realize you survived the worst of someone, and now you get to bury them in elegance. I handed her a plate. She handed me one back. And we stood there, 2 women joined by betrayal, eating cake at the corpse of a wedding that was never meant to be real. A journalist reached out the next day. "This story's going viral," she said. "People want to know who planned the takedown." I said nothing. Just sent her the flyer. "That's your wedding, designed by Ivy Sloan. Let the world connect the rest." Elise declined interviews. "Let them guess," she told me. "Let him wonder what else I found." And I respected it. Some power lives in silence. Some power lives in spectacle. We had mastered both. Logan didn't reach out. He didn't dare. He knew now that any contact would only feed the fire. And fire, once lit properly, never asks permission to spread. I packed up the leftover favors. They were small candles, meant to say, "Let love light the way." Elise smirked when she saw the box. "Keep them," she said. "You earned it." I did. I earned every inch of control, every ounce of retribution, every whispered moment of discomfort Logan would now carry like a shadow. Weddings are meant to be beginnings. This one was an end. Not just of an engagement, but of the illusion that he could walk away from destruction without ever meeting the woman who could architect his fall. And that woman? Was me. Logan didn't try to fight. Not in public. Not in court. Not even in whispers. He vanished the way cowards do, quietly, hoping absence might outpace consequence. But silence isn't protection. It's evidence. And when Elise filed charges for fraud, deception, and emotional distress, I watched the man who once disappeared on me be forced to show up, not for love, but for accountability. He looked smaller in the courtroom. Shaved. Nervous. The type of man who once spun stories and now couldn't even finish a sentence without legal counsel beside him. This wasn't vengeance. This was documentation. And we came prepared. Elise sat beside me in court, poised, resolute, no longer the girl who had dreamed in lace and pearls. She read her statement like scripture, detailing how he manipulated her time, her finances, her family, and her faith in herself. The judge didn't flinch. The gallery did. I watched jurors shift in their seats as she described how he used the same tactics on multiple women, the same ring, the same promises, recycled and weaponized. He doesn't love, she said, he scripts. And the moment she finished, I could feel the room settle, not into pity, but into something colder. Conviction. Logan's defense was pathetic. There was no intent to deceive, his lawyer said. He assumed the prior marriage was over. I almost laughed. Assumed? That's what men like him do. They assume the world will bend to their convenience, that women are puzzles meant to be solved, not people meant to be respected. Elise didn't even look at him as the verdict was read. Guilty of civil fraud. He wouldn't face jail time. But money? Reputation? Legacy? All gone. A public record stamped with disgrace. A future haunted by Google searches he couldn't rewrite. That was our justice. And it was permanent. His name trended for 48 hours, wedding scammer exposed by fiancé and wife. Headlines spun it into a circus, but we weren't clowns. We were architects. We built this from dust and betrayal and laced it with precision. Elise did one interview. Just one. What would you say to him now? The reporter asked. Elise smiled, serene. I'd say thank you. For showing me that lies look a lot like love if you squint hard enough. It aired at prime time. Logan's mother called her, sobbing apologies. Elise didn't answer. Forgiveness isn't a currency we're required to trade. Some debts don't get cleared. People reached out to me too. Not to book weddings, but to end them. Women who'd found rings in drawers, receipts in jackets, passwords that unlocked double lives. Can you help? They asked. And I always said yes. Because after Logan, I didn't just plan events, I dismantled illusions. I became the woman you hired when you didn't want closure. You wanted evidence, spectacle, and a clean exit. What's your rate? They'd ask. I never named a number. What did he take from you? I'd ask instead. Because that's the cost. And once we understood what was stolen, I could show them exactly how to take it back. Elise moved out of the apartment they'd shared. Left behind the furniture, the dishes, the photos, kept nothing but the lessons. I want nothing that touched him, she said. I understood. Some memories are like mold, quiet, invasive, never truly dead until you tear out the walls. She bought a new place. Smaller. Brighter. I helped her hang shelves. Not because we were friends, but because we were survivors. Linked not by love, but by the wreckage of it. And in that silence between hammer strikes, I knew we weren't rebuilding romance. We were laying the blueprint for our own damn empires. One day, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Just my name and his handwriting. Inside was our marriage certificate, torn in half. No note. No apology. Just a quiet acknowledgement of what was always mine to destroy. I burned it in the sink. Watched the edges curl, the ink vanish, the past go up in flame. That's how endings should be: final, unspoken, irreversible. He wanted control. What he got was erasure. And I didn't shed a single tear. Because grief has its place. But not here. Not for a man who mistook my silence for surrender. The last wedding I ever planned was for a woman who'd been cheated on during her engagement. Do you believe in second chances? She asked me. I looked her in the eyes and said, only if the first one didn't kill you. She nodded. Understood. Women like us don't ask for fairy tales anymore. We build walls, we draft contracts, we carve our names into the marble. Love is no longer a gift, it's a transaction we review, revise, and renegotiate. And if that sounds cold, It's only because warmth has rules now. And the first rule? Never hand it to a liar. The studio was quiet again, the kind of quiet that follows a storm, not because peace had returned, but because every battle had been won. I cleaned out the files labeled Thatcher Wedding, archived the images, filed the contracts, then paused at the guest list, now a relic of a story rewritten. Some names still lingered in my mind, faces frozen in gasps or disbelief, the way truth carves its initials into memory. I didn't feel proud or smug or even victorious. I felt finished. And sometimes, that's the rarest kind of satisfaction. When closure isn't a conversation, it's a silence you choose. I ran into one of Logan's friends a month later. He didn't say much, just looked at me the way people do when they realize they sided with a ghost. "You really did it," he muttered, then added, "He won't talk about it." I smiled, not because it felt good, but because it felt accurate. "That's fine," I said. I didn't plan this for him to talk. I planned it so he'd have nothing left to say. Some endings deserve no dialogue, no sequel, no apology, just a final breath before the curtain falls and the villain disappears without applause. Elise started her own business, a consulting firm for women rebuilding after breakups. She called it Threaded, because even after everything unravels, some threads are worth weaving into something new. I helped design the logo, not for credit, not for closure, but because watching her turn destruction into direction was the closest thing I'd seen to justice that didn't need a gavel. We never talked about Logan again. We didn't need to. His name didn't deserve echo, not in the lives we were creating. Some scars fade faster when you stop rehearsing the pain that made them. One night, Elise and I had dinner, not to celebrate, just to breathe. She brought wine, I brought silence, and together we sat in the quiet kind of knowing that doesn't need translation. "Do you miss who you were before him?" she asked. I thought for a while, then shook my head. She was soft, I said, but she didn't know her worth. She thought love meant sacrifice. Now I know it means standards. Elise clinked her glass to mine. Not loudly, just enough to acknowledge the shift. The woman I was died the day he left, and what rose from her remains was untouchable. The ring he gave me still sat in a drawer for a while, not out of nostalgia, but inertia. One day I took it out, not to wear it, not to mourn it, but to see it under light. It didn't sparkle the way I remembered. The stone looked smaller, duller, almost embarrassed. I sold it to a jeweler who asked no questions. "Is it cursed?" he joked. "No," I said. "It's expired." I used the money to buy a new mirror for the studio. Big, clear, impossible to ignore. Because sometimes the only thing better than watching a liar fall is watching yourself rise. Logan emailed once. Just one line. Was it worth it? No greeting. No name. I didn't reply. Not because I didn't have an answer, but because his question didn't deserve one. Of course it was. Every second. Every stitch of tension. Every slow unraveling. Women are taught to forgive, to rise above, to be graceful in the face of disgrace. But I didn't rise above him. I walked straight through him. And when I reached the other side, I didn't look back. That's not grace. That's reclamation. And some stories don't end with a goodbye. They end with nothing. I changed my business name. Ivy Sloan Events became rewritten. No tagline. No frills. Just one promise beneath the logo: we design new endings. Clients came indifferent now. They weren't brides with binders. They were survivors. Women who knew that closure was earned, not handed over with matching napkins. And I gave it to them. Not just weddings. Not just exits. But spectacles of rebirth. Because that's what Logan taught me. That some men build houses on lies, and it's our job to burn them down, room by gilded room, until nothing remains but the truth and the women who outlived it. The last time I saw Elise, we didn't say goodbye. We just hugged, tight, fierce, unspoken. "Thank you," she whispered. I shook my head. "Thank you." And that was it. She walked away into her own chapter. I returned to mine. No ribbon-wrapped ending. No neat resolution. Just peace. Real, earned, unshakable peace. And that's the thing about closure. You don't find it in their answers. You find it in your own. The silence you no longer fill with apologies. The name you no longer flinch at. The life you no longer postpone for someone else's promises. That's closure. That's enough. If that ending left you breathless, make sure to subscribe, because at Letters to Ray Studio, we don't just tell stories, we bury betrayal. Share this with someone who's ever trusted the wrong person. And remember, no lie walks down the aisle without consequences.